You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we are talking about the English language Spanish disaster drama film, The Impossible, directed by J.A. Bayona and released October 11th, 2012. Bayona? I don't... said it
Bayona. I think
Bayona.
it's Bayona.
I don't know anything about this person, so this is the first foray into this as far as I know.
So he directed Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Ah.
But he also did a great movie called The Orphanage, which is a Spanish kind of horror film.
Yeah. I've heard of it. I don't know if I've seen it. I don't think I saw it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, really, really liked it. And he's also going to direct 2 of the episodes for the upcoming Lord of the Rings TV series.
Oh, sweet.
So he's kind of busy.
Cool.
We picked this movie after covering all of these more humorous or lighter comedic monster movies.
Yeah.
So this was like a huge shift from those.
Yeah, for sure. We've covered like heavier movies before, but yeah, this one I didn't know exactly how hard it was going to be to watch in a lot of places. I had not seen this one before, but Netflix kept like recommending it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I need to check this out because Netflix just keeps yelling at me to watch it. So
yeah.
And like the picture they throw up is like baby Tom Holland. And I'm like, okay, I need to check this out. I love Tom Holland. All right.
You know, this was his feature film debut.
Yeah. He was so young. Like, you know, I you know, this is in my notes I get to later when we start talking about his character, Lucas. But like, just because I saw that, you know, when Netflix recommended it to me before I watched it, I'm looking, I was like, my God, he is so little. He's so young. Like, what is this?
He was 14. In fact, I think the day that we're recording this, I think it's his birthday today.
Oh, really?
I think it is his birthday. I think he's turning 24.
I like Tom Holland a lot, but I'm not enough to know when his birthday is.
Well, you know, it pops up on Twitter.
Yeah. June 1st, 1996.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, so when we release this, it'll be like 2 weeks later.
Yes.
But the time we're recording this, happy birthday, Tom Holland.
Yes.
How perfect that we're recording his first movie on his birthday. That's awesome.
I love it. I was really excited when I saw that earlier. I'm like, is it really his birthday? And it was. So I'm super excited that we're covering it today. And one thing in the movie at the start of the film that is not really a spoiler. They're playing on the beach and his character does a backflip. And I'm thinking, is that really him?
That perfect back handspring. I knew that was him doing that himself because I was like, yeah, he's so young and he's ready for Spidey. He is. He is. They made the right call.
I had to watch it a bunch of times. I'm like, is that a backflip, a back handspring, or a back tuck? And I think it's actually a back tuck. is the correct term for it. But where he my God,
does the flip after the handspring kind of part. I don't know about gymnastics stuff that much, so I don't know what to call it.
It was great.
But yeah.
It was him.
It was Tom Holland flipping around just pre-Spider-Man. Already knows where he's headed.
I know.
Because that's like, baby Tom Holland. I was like, that's my Spider-Man. This is weird.
Yeah, he was 14 when he filmed the movie. He was playing a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot how amazing he was in this film. Like, he's so good. Even at that age, he was wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Just to jump the gun a little bit and talking about not necessarily his character, but Tom Holland himself in this movie. We'll talk about that. Like, yeah, I was blown away. I was like, holy crap, Tom Holland is incredible. Like, even, at 14 in this movie, like, the emotion, the tears, like, the agony. Like, when you see him going through, like, these emotional moments in the movie, it's believable. You're like, this kid is fucking incredible as an actor. He deserves the incredible career he has had now as an adult. Like,
absolutely.
Man.
He still looks really young to me even now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Spider-Man movies, I mentioned Spider-Man, he plays a high school student, and he's in his 20s playing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not that much of a stretch. He still looks really young. And
he's got that, like, Ralph Macchio syndrome, where you just always look 20 years younger, 15 years, whatever. You know, you just look younger than you are all the time. 10 years younger.
There's some fountain of youth that some people in the world have access to that the rest of us don't.
Yeah.
This movie was based on a true story, and the director, he went to great lengths to make this movie as accurate to the situation as possible.
Yeah. I think Maria Ballon, the real life Maria, I think she said the biggest lie in the movie that they missed was that the ball was actually yellow and not red. Like, that's how close they were to, like, the actual story. Is her biggest nitpick was the fact that the ball was the wrong color.
Yeah. She was on set too, and she helped to write the script, which I thought was pretty fantastic. Mm-hmm. I feel like we should jump in before I go over all my behind the scenes points while we're having this conversation. Yeah. So it was filmed in Phang Ta, Thailand, and various locations in Spain. The rebuilt Khao Lak Orchid Resort served as one of the filming locations. The name of the family was changed from Ballon to Bennett. And as you said, Maria Ballon was involved. She co-wrote the story for the film along with Sergio Sanchez. The producers of the film heard an interview on Spanish radio where the family was talking about their story and decided they wanted to make a movie of it. And Jay Bayona is a Spanish director, which we already talked about, brought us Jurassic World 2 and Lord of the Rings TV series. He's involved in that. Response from the victims was relatively positive, especially citing that the Thai people who had just lost everything were really focused on helping others, which showcased the unity of the Thai community.
Mm-hmm. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So the budget for the film was $45 million, and it grossed $198 million worldwide. Most of that was an international box office, not within the U.S. It is 113 minutes, Pake. Mm-hmm. Bring on that wonderful synopsis that I'm sure is going to capture the essence of this film.
Sure. All right. This is the story of a tourist family in Thailand caught in the destruction and chaotic aftermath of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami.
Yes.
It's pretty basic, cut and dry. Like, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. It's interesting because I did a little bit of research. Not a ton of research, but I looked up a few things to kind of preface going into this, a little bit about the situation that happened because, as we've said, this is based on a true story. Khao Lak is a coastal area in Thailand and one of the hardest hit by the tsunami. The Thai government reported that there were 4,812 confirmed deaths, 8,457 injuries, and 4,499 missing people after the country was hit by the tsunami. Because the Khao Lak area is mostly bungalows, like single-story motels, hotels, resorts, and not like more high-rise concrete hotels that we see in other areas, they were even harder hit than some places that were in the area but were more built up. They had no idea that this was coming at all, and it took place on Boxing Day, which is the 26th December. One thing that I took from this movie, like right at the beginning, is getting to see those moments where the family, they arrive on, Christmas Eve. They're supposed to be on the third floor. We're given these glimpses into this lovely family. They're having a wonderful holiday. They have dinner together. The next day they open presents. At the dinner, they release those, I think, paper lanterns, and those go up. It's just this beautiful experience. And then everything goes to heck in a handbasket with the tsunami.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. Just watching, because I know what the movie's about, obviously, going into it, so, I have, all these, moments of, sweetness and calm and, family bonding. You're like, oh, this is not going to last. This is, just
No.
enjoy it while it's here. Because they really, painted, this really beautiful family.
It's a montage, of all these different pieces. Like Christmas, they get presents, including the red, supposed to be yellow ball.
Yeah.
Which they're playing with on the beach.
It was such a small thing, but I had to make a note of it. That I loved the artistic cut of Simon unwrapping the ball, and then immediately, the ball being in the same place and frame, bouncing across the beach. I was like, that was a really, creative, artistic cut. And whatever editor decided or came up with that idea, I was like, bravo to them. That was amazing. It's a little thing, but
I felt like the film really was very thoughtful in the way they presented things.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is the first movie we've covered that is a true story, because, we cover a lot of monster movies, so most of those are not.
Come on now, I want to believe in King Kong.
Right. Oh, yeah, no, Skull Island was a documentary. But
okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, but I think this might be the first time we've done that, and so I just, even with that, knowing that, everything we're going to talk about actually happened in one capacity or another, it's this is going to be a different, a more sober, heavier episode than what we usually have been doing, but I think it's okay. I'm kind of excited to do that.
Me too. I enjoy all the different movies that we cover. And you're right, this is the first one that's really, it's based on a true story. It had the family, or at least the mom, Maria, was involved in this film.
Yeah.
In writing the story, and was there to really focus in on making sure that things were authentic to what she experienced. And there was so much that happened to her, that happened to her family. Watching it, knowing that it's based on a true story, knowing how much effort was put into making it be realistic, made me internalize it even more. And my reaction to things, the tears, there were tears.
Yeah.
I got chills at certain points, too, when things would happen, and it just, that so many families did not get that ending with that, catastrophe, disaster.
Oh, yeah. I have a note about that, and we'll go back into more linear stuff in a minute, but
absolutely,
I don't mind jumping way ahead here to the very end of the movie, but because you bring it up, I have a note. So at the end, we have, Maria surviving, and then the Bennetts are headed home, and she's, still in this hospital bed kind of, stretcher kind of thing that they're pushing her, but they're, walking the whole family who has been reunited. They've all survived, and they're walking them out towards the plane. And it's a lot of it is from Lucas's perspective. You really get to see Lucas looking and his reaction, but he's looking at all the other families who were not as lucky, and people who lost people, or who were still couldn't find family members, or were getting news of their family members' deaths, as their entire family is together walking towards the plane. And he even sits there, and I think you can see it hit Lucas that he realizes that they are the lucky ones, that most other people in the situation do not have the happy ending that they had. No,
definitely not. And once I got the same feeling watching them wheel her to the plane, and they're, like you said, they're going by the notice boards, and people are finding out that family members have died, and then after that they're going by basically bodies that have been wrapped up, and you see his his face, and you just know that he realizes they're very lucky.
Yeah.
Because there are so many stories about families who didn't. They may have lost everyone in their family, or at least one person in their family, and it's just very sad.
Yeah.
And I feel like this movie really hit me in the heart, and that, there were definitely tissues available when I was watching this film. And I don't cry at movies that often, but I do all the time.
It's nothing new for me.
Yeah, I kind of thought you might. I think I warned you to make sure you have some tissues available for this one. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah. But
I wasn't sure, too, when I was making my notes, if we should cover it like we usually do with characters or change it up, but I chose to stick with the character format.
Well, I think, and the way that we've been doing it lately is we kind of jump around. By the time we get done with our first character section, we're like, oh, we've covered a lot of notes for everybody else, too. And that's fine. Because, with these, it's hard to call, like, a family who's portraying an actual real-life family an ensemble cast, but it kind of is what it is. But, there's definitely focuses, I think. Strangely enough, I think that, like, the character of Lucas does kind of end up being the main character. He has the most that he does.
He does, and that is not how when I started doing my notes, I did not have him as, like, the featured main character. Mm-hmm. But by the end, I kind of felt like he was, even though so much of his story is kind of interwoven with Maria's.
Yeah.
I feel like it actually was like two different character groupings. You had Maria and Lucas, and then you had Henry, Thomas, and Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And those were like two different stories. I mean, we didn't even know until almost an hour into this movie if Henry and the other two boys survived.
Yeah, exactly. Because, being the first time I watched this, and I didn't look into the real life story, so I didn't know. So there's, that first hour of the movie, I'm like, did they really cast Ewan McGregor in this movie just to, like, kill him off in the first 15 minutes and then we never see him again? Like, I didn't know, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that added to watching the movie and feeling what the characters were feeling.
Yeah.
Because they were feeling that sense of loss, and I think by not showing us anything, it gave you like 45 minutes of, oh my God, did they make it or not?
Yeah, as you're journeying with Maria and Lucas, you're in that same mindset that they are, where you're like, we don't know where Henry and Thomas and Simon are. We don't know if they're alive or dead. We don't know. And so when it puts you in the mindset of the characters you're following, it really does help immerse you in that story and help you emotionally feel what's going on. It gives that weight to it.
Yeah, it definitely, this movie hit me in a lot of different ways, and I'm really excited to break it all down, so I feel like we should probably just get to it.
Yeah. And based on notes here, I say, we'll loosely start with Maria Bennett, the character here, which Naomi Watts, just awesome.
Killed it. She did kill it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so here's what I already said loosely, because, I'm going to blow it up past her just a little bit. But just, to introduce the family, like I said, we get set up with this really cool, portrait of a beautiful little, family unit, Maria and Henry and their three boys on vacation to Thailand for Christmas. And it's just this beautiful thing. But we get, Maria and Henry, like I said, Naomi Watts, Ewan McGregor. And then their three boys in order of oldest to youngest. We have Lucas, Thomas, and Simon. And Lucas, of course, Tom Holland. And then don't have the other two boys.
I do, actually. So named. Thomas was played by Samuel Jocelyn.
Mm-hmm.
And Simon was played by Oakley Pendergast.
Mm-hmm.
And they both have continued to act, and I can't remember which one. One of them has been in a lot more things, and the other one's just been, like, sporadic.
Oakley Pendergast, the younger one, I think has done more. Just based off of that name sounds familiar, like I've seen it in IMDb cast lists of other things before.
Yeah, so we have this beautiful family.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, they've been living in Japan, which is not too far from Thailand.
Yeah.
Like, as far as taking a trip for Christmas to, Khao Lak is not out of the question, because they're not traveling all around the world. It's not that far. It's not like if they tried to go home to England for Christmas.
Yeah.
And Maria's a doctor, but she's not practicing right now. She's really focused in on raising the family, and it's her husband that's working.
Yeah, I like when they're talking to Roger, the guy that works at the resort.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was kind of almost one of my quotes, and I didn't end up putting it in there officially, but so it's not even in my notes. I'm just remembering off the top of my head. But yeah, it says something about that. He said, I'm a doctor, but I haven't actually been practicing for a while because I'm just staying at home raising the kids. And then Roger says, "Oh, you got promoted," which I thought was great.
I want to ask some of my friends who have kids if they feel that way, like it's a promotion, because I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. And we meet them when they're on the plane going to Thailand. I loved seeing into Maria and Henry's relationship when they're talking about who armed the security system and trying to remember if it was armed or not. And they just have this really, not organic, but just this really nice relationship with each other.
Yeah.
So you can tell that they're a happy couple.
Mm-hmm.
They're one, it's not like there's some underlying tension where they're not getting along. It just seems, this is a couple that they really care about each other and they care about their family, and you see them and instantly I didn't want anything bad to happen to them because they just seem like, they're really nice people, and but I knew what was coming. Like I knew that first time I watched it, I knew what was coming. So it wasn't going to be a surprise.
Exactly.
It's not a movie about a tsunami and then we're not going to have one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just kidding. It's just 2 hours of this adorable family enjoying Christmas holiday in Thailand. Hope you enjoyed it. Smile. Yay.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah,
No. No.
Not quite.
No. And they actually, I rewatched it again today because I like to watch it the day of the podcast just to have it fresh, even more fresh. And they were supposed to be in a third floor room or suite, but they ended up on the first floor because I think it was a really busy, the place was full of tourists. Every article I read about the tsunami said that it was tourist season. People were there vacationing with their families, and that's why, the death toll was so high, is because so many people were there. Vacationing, it was a prime time to do that. Yeah. It's a popular spot.
Mm-hmm. So with the tsunami hitting pretty quickly, is where everything shifts. We've talked about this, sweet family moments, and then it just on a dime just turns, and then it doesn't let up at all. Like even after the waves have subsided and it's just death and destruction everywhere, the tension and the horror, I mean, that really what it is, the terror of what's going on, it does not let up.
It doesn't let up for a second. When I was watching it over the weekend, I made special note of the tsunami itself, and they really had no time to prepare. It just came. Yep. First, the power goes off, and the wind's blowing. The ball starts rolling, and the glass is shaking, and the birds are flying. And then in the reflection of the door, you see trees start falling. Mm-hmm. And then there's chaos. Yeah. And then darkness.
Yeah. And when we come back to from there is where, Maria, which I guess is a good thing to talk about her first because she's who we experience this with first. Yes. And it starts with her just clinging to a palm tree and just screaming. And it really set the tone for what this was going to be. I was already I was like, oh shit, this is rough. I mean, she's screaming and I can feel that. And she's terrified, one, because she's clinging to a tree as all this water is rushing past her and she has somehow survived. We see later on in kind of a little flashback thing as she's going under for her surgery, kind of everything she went through in those moments when the water hit. But, so she's terrified of that. But then the other thing, you can already kind of connect with the character enough to know she's screaming because it's just her. Yeah. Where's her husband? Where are her sons? What is, she doesn't know if any of them are even still alive, where they are, what's happened. And you can connect in that moment immediately, just the horror that she's going through.
Yeah, I thought it was very clever too. They show her screaming, then the camera pans out, and all you hear is the water, and you can see that she's still screaming, but you can't hear her. Yeah. And I feel like that really adds to that tension and intensity because you could be yelling and screaming and no one can hear you. No one can come help you. I mean, and everyone was in the same boat. Like, you couldn't go help anyone else at that point. It was just,
Yeah.
how do I stay alive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you see that whole section because, yeah, I mean, Lucas comes floating by and he's screaming and she notices him. So she lets go of the tree and starts floating down behind him because that's just what you do. You're like, I
Yep.
have to go after my kid. Like, that's...
Yeah,
And,
and
you know,
he's
then...
screaming. I
Yeah.
mean, and he is a kid. He is a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we see Lucas. I saw Lucas in this film in different ways.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, he's a kid screaming for his mother. And this is when I feel like she snaps out of her screaming and that intensity to realize, oh my God, that's my son. I've got to try to get to him.
Yeah.
Like, she lets go of, you know, the fear. Because I feel like this film, too, was about fear. It was a lot of fear
Mm-hmm.
at different times, different characters. And so she goes after him. And she wasn't as banged up at first.
Yeah, well, a lot of those injuries were, as we saw, like I said, when she's going under for surgery, we see the big gash on the back of her leg that ended up needing the surgery.
Oh,
came
God.
from the initial impact.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. But yeah, she got banged up more, yeah, as she's going after Lucas, especially the, like, branches underwater stabbing through her. I literally, like, bit my knuckle. Like, when that happened, I was like, oh, God. Like, I mean, it got, like, a visceral reaction from me watching the film. I'm like, oh, no. Ugh. Like, I know whenever, like, I can handle a lot of gore and blood and, you know, stuff like that. I mean, I'll sit there and watch a movie like, you know, the Saw movies and stuff and be completely unfazed by it. But there's something about when it's realistic injuries in times of struggle like this, where it's not for like a sick entertainment purpose, but it's literally to show the horrors of like just like a natural disaster and stuff like this.
Yeah.
It affects me differently. And a lot of this movie, I'm just going like, fuck, this is hard to watch because like her trying to get up in the tree and just gushing blood from her wound. And I'm like, I can't, this is rough.
Even when they were walking through what looked like just like reeds and water, and they start to get out of the water, and from Lucas's point of view, seeing that whole big flap of skin.
God, yeah.
And she turns around and looks at him, and her tank top has ripped.
Mm-hmm.
And so her boob is just hanging, and you see the damage that the tree did.
Yeah.
I could feel that. Oh my God. I'm like, oh no. Oh, it felt, it made me very queasy. Yeah. And then also looking at it from his perspective, this is a little boy who doesn't see his mother like that. Like kids don't see their mother standing there with her boob hanging out. Like, he's feeling so like awkward about it. And it's like, Mom, I'm not supposed to see you this way. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, you know, at that point, you're not even thinking about those things. You're just thinking about, we got to survive. That's all that we need to pay attention to. But there are these situations that were very awkward for him. And Tom Holland did such a great job, like, portraying that awkwardness. Like, he looks away, and
his character, again, jumping ahead a little bit, but rides that really fine, like, not really like riding the line. I mean, he jumps back and forth, but that's the realism of it, is you see him go through so much like bravery and courage and strength that a 10-year-old should not have to, you know, contend with these kind of things. But you see him really, you know, succeed in these things. But then you also see him as the little boy that he is. Like, it kind of back and forth where like he's putting on that best brave face and like doing what he can, and he does some incredible things. Yeah. But then at the same time, like, oh, but he is a 10-year-old boy. Like, and that child part of him still comes through, and you're like, man, I just want to give him a hug right now.
Well, and I think too, his relationship with his mother, he became her caretaker. Yeah. Like, he made sure she got up in the tree. He, you know, shared the soda. He was just trying to he was like trying to be the ringleader, or the dad figure, or the leader of the family. Yeah. Because even when they're walking, before they get up in the tree, they're walking to figure out, okay, where should we go? What should we do? We need to get to a high ground. They hear a little boy crying, and Maria's first response is, we need to go help him. And oh my goodness, Lucas is very adamant. No, no, we're not going to go do that. You know, and they start talking about his little brothers, and he just says to her, she says to him, wouldn't you want someone to help your little brothers if they're out there in this situation? And he basically says, my brothers are dead. They're dead.
Yeah. That was
rough.
That was rough, because I was like, he's way too young to be considering the risk of helping a child in need versus survival of yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're already seeing that he's giving up hope, and that he's just crushed. His spirit is crushed, and he's putting all of his focus on making sure that he doesn't also lose his mom. And that's a rough moment there. And I'm really happy that she's able to convince him to do the right thing. And it's what she says, which is like, we have to go help this kid, even if it's the last thing we do, even if that means that we die too. We can't live knowing that we didn't do something.
Yeah. There were times that the two of them had these very small moments where you could really see a bit more into their relationship with each other. Because I think Lucas and his mom were pretty close.
Yeah.
I got that impression from the beginning. And he at one point says to her, and this is when they're hanging on to the tree, not the big tree they climbed into, but this big branch. And he said, I wasn't brave, and and I'm scared. And she just kept going, shh, and tells him that she's scared too.
Yeah.
And you could see that it just made him feel a little bit better. This is a terrifying situation for an adult to be in, let alone a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
It's not something that you ever dream of. This is just a terrifying ordeal.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. I go back to, it was, seeing the visceral things that they go through, because I had in my notes, I was like, with like Saw and stuff that I said is like torture porn. I was like, this is like suffering porn. This is what this is. Is like, you're just watching them go through horrific thing after horrific thing, and it's the horrible like injuries and the cuts and the gashes and the bruises and it just one thing after the other, and you're like, man. Even when they get like that little bit of reprieve where they're in the tree drinking the soda and they're like that calm moment, but like you still are so on edge. You're like, what's next? Where do they go from here? Because you can tell Maria is getting worse and worse and worse. Like she is not in good shape, and she needs help, or she's not going to live.
Yeah.
And that's when they find, these, local people from the village nearby are out searching for people, and they go with them, and they're doing their best. But, as the man is dragging her backwards through all the wreckage, and just her leg is just bouncing off stuff, and just the pain that she's in. And man,
it's interesting you bring him up, because Maria Ballon told Oprah Daily that this man would not allow her to die, and dragged her through the mud for a really long time, and he didn't leave until he knew she was in good hands. Like, he was so focused on rescuing her, and I think she looks at that. That was a big key to her survival. The fact that they were found when they were.
Yeah.
Because the longer they were out in the elements, in the water, and her wounds were getting infected.
Yeah.
She looks pretty rough by the end of the film.
Oh, yeah.
Sepsis, probably. It was really, really bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, just everything that the infection from everything that's in that water and everything. But then the internal damage, internal bleeding. She's coughing up blood, and the point where she's like puking up blood and like seaweed and stuff that had like lodged itself in her from like near drowning. And her body was in terrible shape. And
she says to Lucas at one point, what color is my leg? And he says red. And we start to learn, okay, well, if it turns black, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And so she asks him that a couple of different times. But they make it to this village, and they don't waste any time, these villagers. They just go and get clothes. They give them clothes, and they get this door and put her on it, and they're going to take her to the hospital. Like, they're just on it, and they're hugging her. She's thanking them, and they're just hugging her and being so, like, caring. And that one villager, the one that dragged her out, he's very determined. Like, they get to the hospital and walks up the steps, and people are in the way, and he's just pushing them out of the way. He's not going to take any. He's going to get her in there.
He goes to Lucas and, like, tells her, like, I mean, he doesn't speak English. He can't communicate with him per se, but, like, he lets him know. He's like, they took your mom that way. You need to go. And, like, he wants to make sure that they are taken care of. Like you said. Yes. And I guess, you know, what Maria Ballone, the real Maria, had even said is the man that this guy is portraying is the real life person that helped her, was the same way, where he made sure that she was taken care of before he left.
Yeah. So they make it to the hospital, and then he leaves off to save another person. Mm-hmm. Like, how many people, I mean, would have died had he, not just him, but other villagers who took it upon themselves to try to save people. That's what community is. That's what caring for your fellow man is all about. I mean, they were devastated too. I mean, a lot of them lost everything, but whatever they had left, they were giving it up to help people in need. And that's a big lesson that everyone should take to heart.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else much to say about Maria. I mean, we just kind of follow her, because then, that's where the movie really shifts over to following Henry and his journey. And then we get a little more awesome stuff with Lucas, which we'll talk about later through this moment. But but Maria herself, then, I mean, that's about all we get from her, is her just getting in worse and worse shape until finally she's able to get the surgery. Well, she goes through 2 surgeries. They get one to stabilize her.
Yeah, to take care of her chest wound.
Yeah.
And then they have to get her back in to do something because her leg. I mean, at one point she asked Lucas what color it is, and he says red. I don't think it was red.
Yeah, I don't. They didn't really, like, follow up on that, but, like, I could tell where he's, like, at that point just chooses to lie to her to.
Yeah.
Which I was fully expecting her to have to amputate, and so I'm surprised that they didn't have to.
I know. I mean, because that hospital was not. It didn't showcase that hospital being a sterile environment.
Yeah, no.
How can you be when you have that many people?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about over 8,000 people injured.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
They did the best they could.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's great that, and that nurse, that they don't really ever give her a name, that helps Lucas through all this, you know, where there's a mix-up with the names. They have, instead of Maria Bennett, they have her, like, a different name, Muriel something.
I wrote that down. And so they have misidentified her as Muriel Barnes. So he thinks something bad has happened to his mother. And so the nurse has taken him to the tent with all the other kids. He's given this little white tag that has his name on it. And he's just terrified. And at that point, he was a kid again.
Yeah.
When he wasn't with his mother, he was acting like a kid. And when he was with his mother, he was the caretaker.
Yeah.
And shifting back and forth to see that in him. I mean, this was an incredible experience for him to go through. And we'll learn a little bit later, because I actually did some research on where Maria and her family are now.
Yes.
And what they're up to. So I have some updates on that. So that's I think that will be really cool.
Mm-hmm. And I say props to that nurse that helps Lucas out, but then also, I mean, she's the one that's, like, really makes sure that we're getting her for surgery now. She's in good hands. Like, she worked with the family once they all showed up too very well, but she made sure that stuff was taken care of.
Yes, absolutely. She did. I felt like when she was around, he just seemed a little bit calmer.
Yeah.
And he had a point person. He had someone to go to.
Yeah.
Because when she was starting to go really downhill and she's saying things that don't make any sense, he goes to her and said, "You've got to do something with my mom now." And she, she tells him, she's honest with him. She says, "We're doing the best we can. We're going to get her into surgery." There was one point before that where he asks her, "My mom's going to be okay, right?" And she doesn't answer him.
Yeah.
And I think she knew the situation was dire.
Mm-hmm. Which is great for, like, it's, shout out to just healthcare professionals in general with, I mean, that's dealing with things like this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at how things have been in the last 14 months dealing with the pandemic, healthcare professionals have stepped up to take care of people and done the best that they can, fighting a very difficult battle. And I think watching this movie just amplifies that. At least it did for me. Just made it. I already was appreciative, but it really increased my appreciation for those who have a very tough job.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So do you have anything else on Maria?
Most of what I have on Maria is when she's reunited with Henry, and I think we should wait to talk about that till we get there.
All right, cool. Which, speaking of Henry, I have a few notes on him. Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
But a few. Mainly that, we talked about like an hour into the movie, we finally and it's a hard cut right back to him just trudging through the mud. And they just left us like trying to figure out and put pieces together, because he's just walking through the mud alone and he finds the ball. And so you're like, what's happened to him? Like, and he's yelling. The thing that kind of took me out, because he's yelling for Lucas and Maria over and over. Yeah. And I was like, what about your other two kids? Like, yeah. And so then being the first time, I'm like questioning. I was like, so where are they? Did they die and he's already had, like, they've already been dead, and so now he's just looking for remaining family, or what? Yeah. And so that tension in me, I'm like, what is happening? So it was a sigh of relief when you realize, and they don't like spell everything out for you. You kind of put the pieces together that, like, oh, he has already been rescued and kind of like found like a group of other survivors that are there at the place that they were at. And so he just left the other two kids that they also made it out. And I love that when he tells his story of, how they both survived, and, talking to them about helping him give him hope that, the others are out there. And so he can leave them with the other survivors, and he's still going out and looking for the other two members of his family that he has not found.
Yeah, that moment where he's getting ready to let the kids go off. I believe he was sending them with Simone to go up into the mountains or just get out of the area. And they're talking about being scared, and he says, do you know what the scariest bit for me was? And the kids, are not sure. They're like, oh, going underwater, or, he says, no. After that, when I came up and I was on my own, that was the scariest part. And when I saw the two of you clinging to the tree, I didn't feel so scared anymore. I knew I wasn't on my own. Yeah. And kids don't understand. They know it's bad, but they don't. This is a very serious situation. Mm-hmm. And all they want is their dad to, like, take care of them, just like Lucas wants his mother. Yeah. Like, they just want, parents are the ones who make everything okay. They're the ones that make you feel better when you're a little kid. Mm-hmm. And to not, they don't know if their mother's alive. All they have is their father. They don't want to lose that. They don't want him to leave them. They want to help him look. Yeah. For Maria and Lucas. And he's just, very adamant, no, you can't, I have to do this myself. And, you're going to go with Simone. You're going to go into this area and you'll be safe. And I'm thinking to myself, he knows that they'll be safe, so he won't have to worry about them. Yeah. He can focus all of his energy on finding Maria and Lucas. Mm-hmm.
And it's always because, you now watching this know in hindsight, you're like, they're at a hospital. They've been taken care of. So it's like, if you went to where other people are, you'll be reunited with them at some point. Like, things will work out. But then you put yourself in his mindset, like, he doesn't know. And so that is a hard decision to make. You're like, well, do I just go to safety and hope that they also have been found and then we can reunite? Or does me going off then, take away any chance of me finding them if they are still out there somewhere?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. And I think the thing that made this so dire and so intense is Maria needed better care.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to get her out of Thailand.
Yeah.
I mean, the hospital was doing the very best it could. That was, obvious. They were way over their heads.
Mm-hmm.
She had some serious infection. And to me, it seemed like they had to get her out of there. And Lucas couldn't do that on his own. Like, he didn't even know the last name of Brian,
mm-hmm.
who was his grandfather.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just such a very intense situation all around.
For sure. A lot of tension in this movie.
Lots of tension.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, Henry sends the other two kids back so he can stay behind, but then he is injured and cut up and bruised. And I mean, not to the levels that Maria is, obviously, but still, I mean, they're all about it. Whatever the makeup artists and stuff on this movie, just having like the blood vessel in his left eye just bust the whole movie. And like, you just see it whenever you're like, man, that is incredible. Like, it's rough to look at, but they did an incredible job. Yes. My only nitpick I would say is maybe on Tom Holland. I wasn't sure what like the bruises down his spine like perfectly. It was like, it looked like he was like cupping for like some kind of athletic thing. I was like, did he get in a fight with an octopus under the water? What happened? No, that was
That's what I thought as well.
That one was a little distracting. I was like, I don't know what the like bruises down his spine are supposed to, how that would have happened and what that's supposed to be. But everything else, let me say the stuff with Maria, like I mentioned, the wound in her leg and in her chest, and those were hard to look at because they were so realistic. And then Ewan McGregor's eye was brutal, incredible the way that they did it. And I was like, man, that's just because you can't help but focus on it whenever this like camera is like close on his face, and you're like, damn.
Yeah. Ugh, so beaten up. And I have notes about how they film some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. Like, the amount of effort, work that went into this movie to make it look as authentic as it did look, I couldn't believe it when I was reading some of the things. It's just a lot of effort went in. Mm-hmm. It seemed like, not just the director, but everyone was committed to making this movie be what it ended up being, which was, a pretty accurate depiction of a family's fight to survive in the aftermath of a tsunami.
Yeah. But so on Henry, I was saying, I am glad that like after dark he does make the decision then to wind up going to a shelter.
Yes.
With other people that, there is like a line where he's like, it doesn't do anybody any good for me to be out just in the dark with all this destruction. You're not going to live out there that way.
No. Out looking in the dark, that's how committed he was to trying to find them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's out in the dark in a place that's very unstable.
Yeah.
And he's out there, which is, part of why he got hurt. But he, like you said, he does finally give in. He goes to a bus station with some other survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he meets Carl.
Yeah.
Who lets him use his cell phone after another man earlier was just like, see, everyone needs something, and was just very...
yeah. That, I get it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you feel like angry at those people, but...
Yes.
It also, you get it. I mean, earlier in the movie, we see Lucas very willing to just like ignore the cries of some little boy for him and his mother. So you get it.
Yeah, definitely. But that is not what happened when Henry meets Carl. They sit down and, Carl, basically says to him, have you made a call home yet? And Henry says no, he couldn't find a phone. So Carl immediately offers his phone and allows him to call Brian, mm-hmm. who I'm guessing is his wife's father.
I think that's Maria's father. Yeah, that's what I gathered from that. Because Lucas didn't know his last name, so it would have been her maiden name.
Yes.
And then Henry just calls him Brian, so yeah.
Yeah. So he calls Brian, and he at first is like trying to explain the situation, and then he gets hysterical.
That scene.
Oh.
That was the first time that I broke down. I was bawling watching this movie, is in that scene where he is just lost it on the phone with his father-in-law, just like barely being able to get any kind of audible words out, saying that, like, Thomas and Simon I found, but like Maria and Lucas, I don't know where they are, and he just, like you said, hysterical. And so in my notes I said, God, I love Ewan McGregor, but why does he have to go and crush me like this? Because I can't handle this.
Oh, he was so distraught, and Brian's on the other end trying to calm him down.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows if he can just calm him down, he can, help him get his head on straight, and he can, focus on what he needs to do next. But Carl just ends the call and gives the phone back to Carl. Stop that, reverse it. So Henry just ends the call in the middle of being hysterical.
Yeah.
And Carl gives the phone back to Carl, and Carl just gives it right back to him and says, you can't leave it that way.
Yeah.
You've got to, call him back. And so he calls him back and explains the situation. And then we learn a little bit more about Carl. He's there on vacation with his wife, Kathy, and his 2-year-old daughter, Gina, who happened to be on the beach when the tsunami hit.
Yeah.
Which does not bode well.
No.
And so, but he decides he's going to go with Henry and look for his family. And they were going to do it together. So they kind of worked together. Poor Carl, he had a crutch. He was not, he wasn't in great shape, but I think it was an injury before.
Yeah, he mentions, like, he didn't want to go to Thailand, or,
his wife didn't want to go to Thailand.
His wife didn't want to because of, he's got this, like, disability with his leg or whatever, that, like, he was going to have a hard time. But, they made the choice to go anyway, and then this happened, which is just terrifying. But yeah, and so it was a previous injury, but then it even gets to the point, where he doesn't want to go into the hospital with Henry because he doesn't want to slow him down anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he, like, takes out a piece of paper and he writes their names on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Henry goes in. But up until that point, you see them, they have maps. They're looking at where different hospitals are, where different things are. They're working together to try to find both their families. And so, Henry, they get to that point where they're on the truck and they have to beg them to allow them 5 minutes to go inside and look. Mm-hmm. And that's when Carl says, I'm going to slow you down. Take this piece of paper. It's got the names of, my family in it. And so Henry goes into the hospital and starts looking.
Yeah, which I say I hated. I didn't hate like this is stupid, but like it just like frustrated me like in a way that was like really tying me into the story. Where it's just like they're all in the same place, but they're missing each other by just a little bit. Where you have Henry walk down a hallway, and then Lucas comes through the door, and he walks over there, and then leaves, and then Henry comes back out the walkway, and then the truck with the 2 younger boys is in it, and like they're parked out front of the hospital. Which thank God for Simon's bladder that could not take it anymore, because that bus or that van would have just like driven off that truck with them if he wouldn't have jumped out to go pee, which then...
And I love that Thomas says to him, can you hold it? And he's like, no. And he gets on and he runs. And I'm like, good for you. You shouldn't have to hold it. You poor little thing. And so, of course, Thomas gets off the truck as well. Mm-hmm. And they go. And at this point, Lucas has seen Henry's shorts.
Yeah, I love that he recognizes the swim trunks because earlier in the movie, before the tsunami hit, when they're playing in the pool, Lucas says something about like, Dad, those trunks look stupid. They look like he's making fun of them. And so the fact that then he sees them and immediately recognizes that's his dad was really cool.
Yeah, so he goes running. Like, he's trying to catch up with his dad. He can't catch up with him. And then this serendipity. That's the only word I can think of to describe what happened after Henry goes outside.
Yeah.
His father has gone to get in the truck. Simon is over there peeing in the bushes. And the camera angle, like, going around Lucas until he finally just starts yelling, Dad.
Yeah, out of just desperation and frustration. He's just screaming at the top of his lungs. Which I guess Henry heard him too. And that's why he got back off the truck to kind of head that way. But Thomas and Simon were closer, and they definitely heard his voice.
Simon knew right away.
Yeah.
That was just the cutest thing to see and hear him. You know, they're getting back onto the truck, and he's like, that's Lucas. And he just jumps off and goes running and yelling and screaming. And their reunion, I had chills. Like, the reunion between them. Because we're talking about a big brother whose middle brother.
It affected me because we get their ages, which is 10, 7.5, as Thomas likes to admit it.
Always.
And then 5, which is, I mean, it affects me very personally because that is my kind of family dynamic. I have 2 younger brothers. I'm the oldest of 3 brothers. The middle brother is 4 years younger than me, and then the youngest is 2 after him. So it's that same, I mean, they're the exact same age span and difference as me and my 2 younger brothers. So, like, I'm getting emotional right now just, like, talking about it because, like, it affected me a lot. And I think it's the first time I'm actually, like, getting emotional on this podcast. But, yeah.
It's okay, Peg. You can cut it out.
But that affected me a lot because I was like, that could be me and my brothers. And so, like, seeing that dynamic, and it's very, I think I'm trying to hold it back right now talking about it. Yeah, to see that dynamic, because, like, I could imagine putting myself in Lucas's position there of not knowing, and just even where he did, like, earlier give up hope that, like, my brothers are dead, they're gone, and then to see them and have them just jump in and embrace him, like, it was a powerful moment for sure.
Yeah. Thomas, like, basically jumped up into his arms, like, and here comes little Simon behind, and seeing that, and I'm getting chills again, just thinking about it, because we see their dynamic earlier where Thomas is annoying his brother because he's scared on the airplane, and he won't comfort his little brother because, you know, he's the big brother, and sometimes when you're the oldest sibling, which I am in my family as well, you don't comfort them. At some point they become annoying. Yeah. And you can't help it. You still love them, but they can be annoying. And seeing that at that point, Lucas's face, seeing his brothers, and realizing they're not dead. I mean, it was I can't put it into words. It was just such a beautiful reunion. Yeah. That was made even better by the fact that Henry has heard it. I wish we had seen that. That's one thing I wish they had showed us. Yeah. But Henry has heard it, and he walks to them, and Lucas sees him. And he's just... That's when Lucas is a kid. That's when Lucas becomes the kid. Yep. And stays the kid. Because his dad is here to take that role. And Lucas can finally just let that go. Because he's just been in that zone of fluctuating between whatever. It's just so hard, you know, for him to try to be strong for his mother and not break down when, I mean, a 10-year-old, you just can't imagine being 10 years old and going through that. I can't imagine being the age I am and going through that. So exactly. It's just crazy. So that reunion. Yeah, and you mentioned that is how much weight that takes off of Lucas, because you see after they're all, like, when Maria goes into surgery and they're just, it's the waiting game at that point, but you see Lucas finally, he climbs up on that table and with goes the door to sleep. That is a bed with that door on it. Oh man. It was the door that Maria was brought in on.
I didn't even realize that. Yeah.
I'm just like, oh
Ugh.
my goodness. And when when he's reunited with his dad, there's that moment, and then he basically says, "Mom's here," or "Mom's alive," and Henry's just like, I don't know how he kept it together.
Right.
Because not only has he not lost his sons, but his wife is still alive. The odds of that in this, they're just not good odds.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, if you just put it in like the frame of the movie, just like a story, a movie, I'm like, oh, and then they miraculously all survived. Like, how, the odds of that, it's just like, it almost feels too surreal. You're like, no, that wouldn't have happened, and it's unbelievable.
It did.
But the fact, again, that it's a true story, that like this entire family, I mean, it was, Kike and Maria Balone, like,
yeah,
and their 3 sons, which were Lucas, Tomas, and Simon. Like, and that they did. The entire family somehow was able to survive and reunite with each other, like, knowing that it did happen this way, and it's real. Like, it's very impactful.
It is. It made me more emotional too, because, like I said earlier, I don't cry. But this movie, I mean, it was ugly crying. It was serious. I was so affected by this. Knowing that it was true and that this happened, it I couldn't not cry. It just came out. But we did skip over, or actually we haven't skipped over, because we've been talking about Henry. When we get to Lucas, there are some things that happened with Lucas on his own adventures that were pretty amazing as well.
Yeah. For sure. Which I think that's about all of the notes and stuff that I have on Henry. So we're ready to jump in.
Just about. I had one more thing that I wanted to bring up about. Right. It involves Maria and Henry. Mm-hmm. And it basically is when Henry gets up and sees Maria, and it's like she feels this weight is off her now because she thinks she's dying. Mm-hmm. And she even asks, am I dead?
Yeah.
Because she thinks, they think she and Lucas thought they lost them. And she's scared, but she thinks she's going to die. So she just starts telling Henry, take care of the babies. And he just keeps saying, nope, I'm here. I love you. And then she goes into the operating room, and the anesthesiologist wants to put her out for the surgery, and she's afraid to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And the doc says, oh, close your eyes and think of something nice. Well, she did not take that advice.
No. She immediately just thinks back to the initial impact and what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see, everything that happened to her, and I don't know how she survived it. She's very, very lucky. That's all I'm going to say with that.
Yeah.
But now I'm ready to go talk a little bit about Lucas.
Oh, yay. Just, this kid. So good. Again, it's like Tom Holland, incredible, but just even outside of him, just the character of Lucas and in the movie. And then I'm sure even Lucas Wallone in real life.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's an incredible story, and like I don't even know where to begin. So just gotta go through my notes. Like I said, what I haven't talked about. I go back kind of the beginning because I had some, when they're floating on the waves of the initial impact, and Lucas and Maria are trying to get back to each other, and they're reaching across this mattress for each other, and then it hits a pole, and they get separated again, and just a lot of these things, it's constant tension through that moment. And there's other horrifying things going on. You see this van hit a guy who's clinging on to something else, and then they hear a baby crying from inside that van, and then it gets hit by another wave and toppled and taken under, and it's just horrific.
Yeah.
At that point. And
there's nothing they could do.
There's nothing. Yeah. And there's people clinging to trees and poles and stuff. Like, also, like, you put it from, like, these faceless, nameless, other people you see for half a second clinging to a tree, but put it in their perspective. You're seeing a mother and son screaming and yelling for each other, floating down, and you're watching that. You can't do anything for them.
No, you can't. You can't. There's nothing you can do. I mean, you watch it happen. It was a different situation when Lucas and Maria were looking for Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
When they found Daniel, they weren't in the middle of a current at that time. They were able to go and find him and help him.
Yeah.
But there was really nothing anyone could do. I mean, you can't fight a wave. You just can't. It's not something that...
Ride it.
You ride the wave. I mean, get a surfboard maybe, but even that's not going to help you. I mean, it's just it was just such a serious thing.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier in the podcast, this was different for us to go down this road.
Yeah.
It was a different experience.
Uh-huh. But I love, Lucas has this thoughtful kind of mindset that we see him in. I mean, it's kind of funny, because, again, we get at the beginning, he's, Mom, can I have this, Coke that's in the fridge? And she has this whole thing, which I guess the kids all know about. She's like, if you're thirsty, and then they all just kind of like, then get you some water. Like they, like, they know, like, yeah, okay, health.
Well,
mom,
she is
whatever.
a doctor. Yeah, she's a doctor.
And so it is kind of a funny little callback that he sees his Coke like floating there, and he's like, and I'm going to put that in my pocket.
My pocket.
And I couldn't really tell. I was like, at first, like, it's the little things. It's like a little like treat for him that he's like, this is something that is like normal, like I need to have this. But I don't know if there was some kind of like planning in his head at the same time, because it did end up coming and, a lot, being very helpful as they're up there in that tree for could have been hours and hours.
Yeah. I'm not sure how long they were up there.
That, he's able to crack that can and like have his mom and Daniel and him like drink on it and stay some level of hydrated.
Yeah. I mean, that was lucky to have that. They were really lucky to have that.
For sure. But then what I really get, where I just have my notes where I said, oh, Lucas, this kid is fucking incredible. Like, that's just my note.
Oh, I think I know.
Is in the hospital when, he's told to go help, do something that's helpful because he's good at that. And what ends up kind of just by chance happening is because he runs into this Swedish guy who's looking for his family and his sons. And
Mr. Berntstrom.
Yes. And he's taking down names of people's loved ones that they're looking for. And then he's just wandering the entire hospital complex, just yelling these names, hoping that somebody will be one of these people or know one of these people.
He keeps adding to it.
Yeah, and
he keeps adding to it the whole time.
He's just building this list, and it was just awesome. And then it hit me, and I cried when he says, Morten Bernstrom, and this kid on this bed, like, yeah, like what? And like he's trying to communicate because they're Swedish, I believe, and so he doesn't speak English, and so he's trying to be like, your dad, and Papa, yeah, your Papa, he's here, and that kid is so ready to jump up off the bed and run with him, and he's like trying his best to like rest, I'll go get him, and just to see Lucas step into such a like powerful, like helpful, and like this role where he's like, I'm here to help people. And he kind of puts himself in charge where he's like, no, you stay. And you
stay.
And
it's too far. You need to rest. Let me go. And then they hug just before he goes to find his Morten's father. He just gives him this huge hug. Yeah. And it's like, it's just the emotion of this movie. These moments and the emotion that you feel when you're watching it. And he runs, of course, back to get Mr. Bergstrom. Mm-hmm. And they don't even speak. He just looks at him. He yells to him, and then he looks at him. And then Mr. Bergstrom gets a smile on his face.
Yeah, just knows. It's so cool. Yeah, that part really hit me a lot. Just like in another way where it's like just a powerful, like, hopeful moment.
Yeah.
And it's good to see because, you know, I talked about Lucas losing hope and stuff, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but then when he sees Daniel in the hospital and has been reunited with his father, and he doesn't go over there and say anything to him, he doesn't, but just, you know, you see his eyes get a little teary and he has a smile. And like, I can tell, I was like, not only is it just, it makes him happy to see that, but that was the spark of hope that he needed in that time
so much.
for hope, you know, for worrying about his own mother and her situation at that time. Like,
yeah.
That was the hope he needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he got it at that moment. And then he goes back, and that's another opportunity that his mother, you know, asked about her leg. And that's when he said it was still red, even though I'm pretty sure you could tell by the look on his face, it wasn't still red.
Yeah. Cause then right after that, he immediately goes to the nurse. It's like, we need to do something.
Yeah. My mom's, heard it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because he tries to tell his mom that he saw Daniel. He wants to share that hope, but like she is so out of it, like, and he doesn't have any opportunity. But
she asks him what's in the can. Like, is there any more left in the can? Mm-hmm. I'm assuming she's back thinking about the Coke.
Yeah.
And so he goes in search of getting her water, and that's when he sees his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Just the shorts.
Yeah.
The really bad shorts that he picks on his dad about.
Yeah. Which with Lucas, we did jump over one major thing. Is after he, you know, goes on his awesome mission to just like try to reunite people. But that's when he returns to his mother. And I know he's so excited. You know, there's the little kid part of him again where he's like so giddy. Like he wants to go back and tell Mom, you know, I brought a father and son back together. And he's so proud of himself. And he's...
Yeah.
And he gets back to the bed and it's gone. Like the mattress has been taken off. She's gone. It's just the frame and they're putting some other guy on there. And he starts freaking out, which, absolutely. I mean,
of course you would.
Because where do you jump to? I mean, I immediately jumped to like, oh, she died while he was gone. And they throwed her out and like put somebody else in the place. Like, and for all he knows, that's what happened.
Yeah. That's when the nurse takes him, or the doctor, I think she was a nurse, takes him to the tent with all the other kids.
Mm-hmm. He's just in the children's area. And like you said, at that point, he's just this lost little boy again. And
And that it was at that point that they went back into the story and we got to see that Henry and the other two boys were alive.
Yeah.
Because at that point I'm thinking, oh my God.
She's just Lucas.
She's dead. And what is going to happen with this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And fun note, while he's in that holding area, the children's area, and he's looking, you know, he's got his little name tag and is looking around, it focuses in on a little boy. I think the name like Jay or something like that. And it lingers on the shot of this kid for a little bit. That was actually, and you know, they use like the twins situation to like, you know, film with different, so I don't know which twin it was at the time that we really see focus in. But that character, that little boy, was Tom Holland's younger brother or younger twin brothers, who one of them was in the role when they were shooting that. But Sam and Harry Holland.
Oh,
the role.
Wow. That's neat. I think we talked about that before we were recording. We talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Thought that was really cool.
Not only do you get to go shoot your first feature film, but your little brothers get to come too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you know, a really memorable experience.
Which I wonder what kind of effect that has on Tom. You know, doing this movie where he's thought he lost and then reunited with his two younger brothers, and then to have his actual, I mean, you saw how it affected me.
Yeah.
Like to have like his actual like two younger brothers with him while filming this stuff, and they're on set too. Yeah.
Yeah. That had to have been interesting. I wonder, it makes me want to go look and see if anyone ever asked that question.
Yeah.
And find out, you know, what the answer is.
Because I want to ask that question. If I could spend any amount of time and talk with Tom Holland and pick his brain about things. God, yeah. Because I know, you know, for those who maybe listen to the podcast don't know, I've done like, you know, panels and moderating and stuff. And I've met actors before and talked to them. So I have that mindset a lot when I'm like watching movies and shows. I'm certain actors. I'm like, God, if I could just talk to them and ask them this and this and this. Tom Holland is definitely one of those like dream, you know, interviews that I would love to have.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I'd want to watch that panel.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's so cool. He's just awesome. Great actor. Great guy. And so, that would be definitely one of those things. Now seeing this movie is like, there's a lot that I can relate to the character he played and things he did here. I was like, I'd love to take him back to this movie and be like, hey, like,
let's talk about the impossible. Yeah. Let's talk about where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
Your first feature film that you did. Because this movie, because it was so serious, it is based on a true story. It's more than based on a true story. This is really, for the most part, what happened.
Yeah.
For this family. So everyone has a starting point in their career. This film, as your first feature film, the intensity, the tension that's in this, the subject matter, it'd be real hard to forget anything to do with it. Because it's just so deep and so intense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a young actor, this is quite the, jump into an acting career. Be like, well, I mean, if he can handle this, then hell yeah, of course he's going to be Spider-Man later in his career. He can handle anything.
Of course he is. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, do you have any other notes about Lucas?
Let's see. I don't think so, other than the moment at the end when they're on the plane before they take off and he gets to go back and talk to his mom. And the one thing that he wanted to tell her was that he saw Daniel. Like, it still was in his head that much that he had to let her know.
That he was okay. Yeah, and that he had a family. Yeah. Because I kept trying to think, what is it he wants to tell her? And all I could come up with is that it was about Daniel. Mm-hmm. It had to be that he saw him and that he was okay and that he was with presumably his father, because Maria was really upset about leaving for the hospital and Daniel not being with them.
Yeah, whenever they got loaded up on that, she was loaded up on the door and they were taking her, because, a little bit of clarity where she asked, where's Daniel? And Lucas like, I don't know.
I don't know.
And he kind of has that, at that point, he's like, but I'm worried about you right now. Yeah. And, it's what it is. Like, it's another one of those hard moments. And so it is good that we see that somehow, because I assume, they wouldn't have left Daniel just out in the wreckage somewhere. He would have followed them back to the village. So, he was there. He was with people.
Yeah. I'm glad that they closed that door. I'm glad that we got that closure. And that really did happen. Like, they really did find a little boy named Daniel, and he really did get reunited with his family. So cool. It all is real. Because I looked into some of these things thinking, how much is this is dramatization?
Right.
There were so many things that actually happened. I was blown away, and I stopped looking stuff up. I'm like, I don't think I need to anymore.
I found that quote from Maria Balone that said, like, the biggest lie in the movie was the fact that the ball was yellow and not red. So it kind of shows that they paid a lot of attention. They really listened to the Balone story, like the family's story, and made sure that things were accurate and really painted the picture. Man, so what other notes do we have on any other characters, any other things? I guess I'll go just kind of through my stuff. I have a little bit on Thomas and Simon, but we covered all of it except for one thing I didn't mention was just the small little moment with the old lady at the little, area in the mountains.
Yes.
That Thomas has this really beautiful moment, where Simon's like asleep on his lap and he's got him covered up in a blanket. And this old lady just asks if she can come sit next to him in perfect 7-year-old fashion. He's like, how old are you? Just not afraid to just say the first thing comes to his head. But the lady's cool about it. And, she talks, I'm almost 74 and you is like 7.5. It's like, oh, wow. But even like this big difference, but they have this real connection where they're looking up at the stars. And, we find out, because we do see that on like Christmas night or whatever, the night before everything happened, where Thomas couldn't sleep and he's snuggled up with his Maria, with his mom in the bed, and he's saying, "Can we just go outside and go look at the stars?" And she's like, "Oh, maybe tomorrow night, maybe." And so he kind of got to do that the next night, even though it's a very different situation. But he had that moment to just look up at the stars, and turns out he knows the names of all the constellations. He's one of those, kids that's really interested in that stuff. And so then to have this older lady that sits there with him and is talking about, the light, from a lot of these, they've already burned out, but the light still reaches us years and years later. And
yeah,
he's like, so they're dead. And it almost, seems like it could take kind of a dark road, but then it really isn't, because he doesn't know where the rest of his family is at this point.
No, he doesn't.
And so it kind of plays into an analogy of that conversation where it was like, maybe they are, maybe they're not, and we don't know, but we can still appreciate the light that's there from them and enjoy the beauty. So it's a way of like a realism, but then also her giving him this hope of like, yeah, we don't know where your family is. We don't know if they're alive or dead, but don't let that, give up hope that they could be. And that whatever the truth of that situation ends up being, that they're your family, and all of the good, the bad, everything's like they're there with you no matter what. You're not alone here. And that was a beautiful moment that I really love.
That was a great moment. The actress that played the lady is Geraldine Chaplin, and she is the daughter of Charlie Chaplin.
That's awesome.
So she also was in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and a host of other things. And she also has a daughter named Una, who was on Game of Thrones.
Yep.
So acting runs in that family.
Yes.
Top to bottom.
So she's in Fallen Kingdom. So she must know, the director must know Bayona pretty well.
I think so. I think it's possible. I don't know.
But yeah,
it's kind
I'm
of
trying
cool.
to think if I have any other notes other than, wow, let's end notes on a very sad note. But Carl, touching back on Carl.
Oh.
He's one that I feel really bad for, because we end his story in this film on a really sad note of, telling the driver, like, it's okay, we don't have to wait anymore, let's go, because he sees Henry is reunited with his family. And as much as that's got to be a beautiful thing and he's happy for Henry, it's also this realization that, like, all right, Henry has found his family, they're alive, and mine are still gone. And he's still all alone in this moment. And then that's the last we see of him. And that hit me. I'm like, man, that's rough.
And he was such a good person. Like giving his cell phone to Henry so Henry could reach out to the family and let them know. Which in turn, I think, helped facilitate getting Maria out of Thailand. Because their insurance agent or whoever was there like the very next day. So I feel like Maria was on a very downward spiral.
Yeah.
She was real sick. And they were very lucky that they found her. This family, I think they know, and it will come up when I do the little update on them. I think they know how fortunate they are. And they're it's not a big surprise when you look at Lucas running around the hospital trying to reunite people. When you read a little bit more about this family and what they do with their life and their time, you realize that they're just good people. I mean, but there were so many people too that lost, mothers, fathers, children. Not even, we haven't talked about the property damage because that's like not even on my radar really, but I just started thinking about it. It's like, well, if you think about all the people that lost everything, that lived in Thailand and this was their home. I mean, because, it's something I really didn't think about.
Yeah. Until
now, that people lost everything and it was their home. And the Bellons were, vacationing. And a lot of the people impacted were people that were on vacation, but there were also a lot of people that lived there. That was their home.
Yeah.
And their whole world was just basically, destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much. It makes me honestly want to go and read about what's happened after the tsunami, like to the area, like what the rebuilding, because I know they rebuilt a lot of things because they used the same resort.
Yeah.
To film this in, which I'm sure must have been a cathartic experience for Maria to go back there.
Yeah.
Because there was one point, and it's in my production notes, but I'm going to spill it here because I think it needs to be here. They made sure that she and Henry and the boys were in the same exact location in and around the pool that they were when the tsunami hit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That is the level of detail that they went to with this film. So I thought that was cool. It's pretty incredible. I mean, yeah. So other than that, I think that's pretty much all of the notes that I have. Except that Thomas was on a tall tree and didn't want to come down. His father had to basically coax him down from the tall tree. Mm-hmm. And Simon was on a palm tree. I don't really have anything else. I do have a few notes about the tsunami itself, which we did talk about a little bit earlier. It was basically about the recreation of the tsunami. They recreated it with a mix of digital effects and real water surges that they filmed in slow motion and created in a Spanish water tank using miniatures that were destroyed by the huge wave. And Bayona wanted to use real water to make it more realistic. And Watts and Holland spent 5 weeks filming in a massive water tank, which proved to be both physically and psychologically demanding.
Yeah, I could imagine.
As you can imagine. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So those are all the notes that I have on the film itself.
All right.
I can give you some updates on the family.
Absolutely. I love that.
So Maria Ballone travels around the world as an advocate for survivors of the tsunami and gives motivational speeches about how she overcame the turmoil and 2 years of recovery following her injuries. Took a long time.
Yeah.
Enrique Alvarez, a.k.a. Henry, volunteers his time at the NGO Pro Activa Open Arms, which helps refugees arriving on the Greek coast from Turkey. Lucas is now 27 and a doctor who was involved in the fight against the coronavirus. He wanted to be a doctor from the time he was 10 years old, especially while he was sitting at the bedside of his mother while they were in Thailand.
That's just incredible.
Isn't it? It's fantastic.
Yeah, that we see, in the film adaptation, like seeing Lucas running around and helping people in this hospital situation, and that sparked something in him where he was like, this is what I want to do with my life professionally, like for real, is to be able to help people in hospitals. And the fact that he's done that now is incredible. It
is. It really is. Tomas studied at Atlantic College in Wales because of its renowned lifeguard program. He also completed a BS in Science, Technology, and International Affairs at Georgetown. And Simon is a trained lifeguard that works with Pro Activa Open Arms, just like his dad, and is still in school studying anthropology and politics at University College Utrecht in the Netherlands.
That's awesome.
So the family as a whole are very much involved in giving back and helping other people. So that was a rabbit hole that I went down.
That's really cool, though.
Yeah, it was really cool to get to, see that they're doing okay and what they're doing, because, I mean, it's been, my gosh, it's been 17 years since the tsunami hit, I believe. Yeah. So, yeah.
Awesome.
That is what I have there. Do you have any other notes?
that is all that I have. So I'll let you just keep on going with production.
All right.
Notes. This is
I
your
can
time
do
to
that.
talk a bunch. Go.
It's my time? Okay.
I'll talk a bunch when we get to feedback and stuff later. That's when I get to talk a bunch.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. So the director decided not to specify the nationalities of the main characters in order to create a universal film in which nationalities were relevant to the plot. I think that was pretty apparent.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't take any liberties and wanted the movie to reflect a real-life story as close as possible, which I brought up a few minutes ago, including the accuracy of where they were standing around the pool when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was, I mean, that's really going real deep. So we already mentioned that Maria Balon was on set in Thailand. It must have been cathartic to be in some of those locations, I'm sure. If you think about, the hospital and the resort and everything. And they stayed pretty true to form with that. She actually chose Naomi Watts to play her in the film, saying that Naomi Watts was her favorite actress after seeing her in the film 21 Grams, which is a pretty good film. It's really deep. She worked with the screenwriter, which we talked about, and that was in order to make sure that the story was accurately told, including rescuing the boy Daniel from Sweden. Naomi Watts was nominated for a Best Actress Oscar for her portrayal of Maria, but was beaten by Jennifer Lawrence, who received it for Silver Linings Playbook. Here's an interesting tidbit. For the underwater scenes, Watts was strapped in a rotating chair. At one point, it malfunctioned, and instead of stopping, it went spinning in the other direction. Can you imagine being underwater and being spun in a chair in the first place? But then instead of, you're indicating you need a break, and instead of it stopping, it just spins you in the other direction. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like some crazy ride that you would have at an amusement park.
Right. Except underwater where you can't breathe and you need up.
It's terrifying. Not a fan. Not good. We talked about the color of the ball. Many of the extras in the film were survivors of the tsunami.
That's cool.
It took a year to put together the 10-minute recreation of the moment the wave hit the Khao Lak Resort. And they only had one chance to shoot the tsunami flood. It would have been too expensive to reshoot. Can you imagine, you're directing a film and this is your only opportunity, you can't shoot it again, and what if something goes wrong?
Right.
I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't know what you do. You make it work somehow with CGI, I guess. The film won, and this is my last point, the film won 5 Goya Awards, which are Spain's national annual film awards. Kind of, I guess maybe like the Oscars in Spain, I'm not sure. It basically honors the best in Spanish film.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. And that is all I have for production notes. There were a lot, but we talked about a lot of them throughout our discussion, so yeah.
All right. Well, now it's time to get into some quotes. And
I've used a lot of mine already, so.
Yeah. I have 2.
Yeah.
And one of them you mentioned earlier. So I said, I thought that, when Maria first sees her whole family again and her first question is, "Am I dead?" was powerful, because she's like, everything she's been through, and then she just sees her husband and the 2 other boys right there, and there's no way this is real.
No, it's not real. It's not real.
Yeah, and then the other one is a 2-part that happens 2 different points in the movie, and I think you have it on yours, and I'm stealing it, but
you go right ahead, Pake.
Yeah, but I thought it was really cool, just this, showing these 2 things. Is we get on the plane where Maria gets up to go sit with Lucas because him and Thomas aren't getting along or whatever. We find, Thomas is scared of the plane jumping around and stuff, and Lucas is giving a hard time about it. So she goes back and says, just give him, be nicer to your brother. He's just scared. And Lucas responds, everything scares him. And then the plane kind of turbulence hits and Maria freaks out for just a second. And then he kind of laughs and smiles at her. And he's like, I wonder who he takes after. And then later at the hospital where he's trying to get her to eat this tangerine that he's peeled. And he says, you need to eat something. Eat it. And she takes it, but then she goes, so bossy. And he responds with, I wonder who I take after.
I love that too. I love that connecting thing.
Yeah.
Between the two. Like, because it's really just this continuation.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I only have one. Because I've already read the one about Henry when he's talking with Thomas and Simon about what scared him the most.
Mm-hmm.
So the one I have left is when Maria was laying in bed before surgery, she tells Lucas, look at this place. They're so busy in here. You got to go and do something. Go help people you're good at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's all I have. Yeah. Not a lot of quotes because I feel like so much of this movie, it wasn't even the dialogue. It was the facial reaction, the body language that told the story.
Yeah.
So much more than quotes.
So then that means we get to our rankings. This will be interesting.
It will be interesting because I feel like this movie has to stand on its own.
Yeah.
It can't be compared to Snakes on a Plane or Godzilla or The Day After Tomorrow or Love and Monsters. It can't be compared to any of those films because it's a real disaster film.
Mm-hmm.
And the work that was put into it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really difficult. But, and I don't mind going first because I stand behind my ranking.
All right.
So this movie, I feel like the effort that went into making it be authentic, the acting, and the effects, and the way that they were able to tell the story without tons of dialogue, I, at the end of the day, could not rank it any lower than a 9.5.
Wow.
I had to do it. And I don't break that out very often, Pake.
No, you don't. Man,
oh,
I feel
dear.
like I'm doing a disservice to it if I'm following that.
Oh, boy.
Man, yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and say what my initial gut reaction, what I went with was an 8.8.
Okay. That's okay. We don't have to agree.
Rough and a lot of stuff. I think I could easily bump that up to a 9 and be perfectly happy with doing that. But yeah, I mean, because there's nothing really to complain about with this movie at all.
No, there isn't.
At all. So, yeah, it's just... yeah. I think that's where I'm at on that.
Okay.
I have to say.
Ooh, I wonder what people have to say about this movie.
Yeah,
I'm excited to hear what they have to say. We took them to a real dark place this week.
Yeah. So I might as well go ahead and answer this real quick.
Yeah.
We'll see what they said. All right, we've got a little bit of feedback this week.
We do.
Go ahead, jump into it. This first one comes from our friend Jerry. He says, one of the best comedies ever. Oh, wait. Oh, no. He's talking about Cabin in the Woods from last week. Oh, good. Oh, it's like, make sure we clarify.
Yes. No. Yeah. Cabin in the Woods.
It's like,
he loves this movie. He told me on a Zoom game night the other night, he told me that this is one of his favorites. It makes him laugh, and he really enjoys it a lot.
Again, clarifying. Cabin in the Woods from last week.
Cabin in the Woods, not The Impossible.
Or 2 weeks ago, actually, because we did Geostorm last week.
2 weeks ago. Yeah.
People are a little behind. We're getting Cabin in the Woods feedback this week.
Yeah. A few... that, you know what, though? We like it. Even if it's a couple weeks later, or even if it's one of our earlier episodes and you really liked it, let us know. We're happy to get your feedback.
For sure. So again, thanks, Jerry, for letting us know you loved Cabin in the Woods. I'm sure you listened to that episode a couple weeks ago, so you know, so do I.
Yes. Pake loves it.
Which we actually do have, strangely enough, another Cabin in the Woods kind of follow-up and feedback from another friend of ours, Derek. So.
Yes, we do. Derek. So I'll take this one. Derek says, Loved this movie and really enjoyed the podcast too. If you want to see more of Fran Kranz, aka Marty, he played a central role on both seasons of Joss Whedon's Dollhouse. He was the lovable, quote, nerd on there. I really enjoyed his work on that. I remember him from Dollhouse. I loved
Never
that
watched
show.
that one.
Oh, it was great. It's a lot of fun.
All right, and then we do have feedback for this week on The Impossible as well. So
yes.
Get to those. Of course, the feedback from Twitter. Our good friend Tony, always coming through over there. And she says, I did see this one a couple times. So scary and tense. The little boys lost on their own just broke my heart. Such a good movie. Yeah. Yep, I'm with you on that. And if you've listened to this episode, then you know just how how deeply that did affect me. So yeah, that was a first for this podcast, I think.
Oh, it was. It was. But, sometimes you just have to.
Mm-hmm.
A movie will hit you in a certain way that it just evokes this emotion.
Yeah.
And you can't control it. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Be free to be you and feel things.
Yes. Feel whatever you need to.
Yeah. And then finally, rounding it out this week, also here on The Impossible, is we do have a voicemail from Steve with his patented pending, maybe. But it is hashtagged now. It's out there.
It is hashtagged. It is hashtagged. Steve is actually using. Yep. Hashtag live Steving. It's a hashtag. It's catching a lot of attention, so I'm excited for Steve with his new brand of feedback. So we might as well get to it and let's hear what he thinks about The Impossible.
All right.
Hello, Pake and Daphne. This is Steve, and this is for The Impossible. This is the one. I think I've seen it before, but I think I've only seen it once. This is a very cute family. Do they really do this where they put send those things off into the sky, those lanterns? Is that true? Because wouldn't that be bad? Wouldn't they fall down eventually? I guess jet-lagged kids don't wake up early on Christmas Day, huh? You got to get all my funny stuff out because I know this is a true story and the subject matter is real heavy. So I got to get all my funny stuff out before the bad stuff happens or before it gets serious. Yeah. Oh, I just grimaced when that branch went right into her and the blood. Oh, wow. I'm tearing up already. I mean, these Naomi Watts and Tom Holland, even as a little kid, man, really good acting right here. Would be tough to remain hopeful in this situation, but the kid going straight to his brothers being dead. Man, I'm getting choked up. I'm still getting choked up. This movie is gonna wreck me. Oh, another scene that's getting me choked up is these villagers helping. Gosh, I guess. Wow, this is just a really good. Oh, it's so good to see people helping each other in a disaster, and we know that this happens. And for every piece of crap, there is 10 good people out there. Mm-hmm. I don't even have the words for this whole pulling the whatever that was out of her throat scene because whoa.
Oh, that was bad.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't know how old this kid is supposed to be, but she's telling him to go out and help people. Wow. Why isn't she telling him where his mom is? Like, I understand you want to get all this other information, but yeah, just tell the kid where his mom is. Yeah, I'm just going to lie here for a minute. You make it back to your room and then you hurt yourself. I don't know if wandering around in the dark was the best choice for him, but I'm sure glad that somebody found him and brought him somewhere safe, at least for the night.
Yes.
Okay, part of me hopes that this is not entirely true, that they made this kid wait hours before they told him his mom was alive. Don't tell me they're going to just miss each other at this hospital.
I was so scared of that.
Oh, come on. And it's getting me again with these kids. Oh, man. Such a great, feel-good, true story movie. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was awesome.
That was amazing, Steve.
We both got to be emotional together in some of the same places in the movie. So
yeah,
we stand as brothers in solitude there.
It was rough, I think, at times, just because It is a serious movie, and it's the first one that we've done that I've cried at, I think.
That's definitely not the first time for me while watching the movie.
Oh no, I forgot Love and Monsters. Oh, that one. Yeah, but this was the first, I think, real serious, based on a true story movie that we've covered. And it invoked all sorts of emotions. And I remember Mark suggested it to me one night way back. And I don't know why we picked it for right now, like to cover it this week. But I'm glad we did, because I just think it's a really special movie. And I'm glad, even though it's not your usual creature feature, monster, disaster movie that we cover. I mean, we've covered ones like Greenland and Day After Tomorrow and Dante's Peak. None of those were true. This one was, and it was so based so much in fact that I think it's easy to get choked up and emotional when you watch it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, again, thanks so much to everybody who left your feedback on this movie and on previous movies. And anybody who would like to do that, if you'd like to leave feedback now for this episode of The Impossible after we've covered it, or for anything else we've covered, or for anything we will cover, maybe next week, we'll find out what that is shortly, then you can leave any of that feedback, in a couple different places. You can go to Facebook, which is facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us and send us voicemails at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. Above all, though, if you're enjoying the show, please share the love in different ways. You can go to Apple Podcasts and give us some reviews and ratings, or you can just tell your friends and family and people you know who listen to podcasts and love movies as much as we do to check us out on all of those social media platforms or all the podcast players, and you can get links to all of those at runforyourlivespodcast.com.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You can.
All right, I'll give a couple shout-outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us, as I do every week. First, of course, Strange Indeed is back and running. Me and Rima are covering the Apple TV original Lisi story, which is created, written, and adapted, screenplay, everything by Stephen King. It's the first time he's taken one of his own books and also done this writing for the show. It's a really important one for him. And so far we've done 3 episodes, and I'm really liking it right now. So I definitely recommend to check it out if you have Apple TV. It's a good one to check out.
I'm so glad that you and Rima are enjoying it, because I've said it a million times, it's one that I love, and I know it can be complicated, but I think you guys are doing great so far in covering it, and I look forward to listening to the most recent episode that should be out when this drops.
Yeah, it should be out today. And then you have wrapped up your coverage of Handmaid's Tale Season 4 over on House Podcastica, which has been awesome. So how has that been?
It has been so much fun covering a show that's a weekly show. Getting to podcast with Jason and Wendy has been so much fun. It's different than covering a movie. I feel like with a movie, you can cover it, and when it's over and you're done, you're done. With the show, you really have to stay connected to everything that's happened and start thinking about what could happen and just really be prepared. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm glad that Jason asked me, and I'm super stoked. We recorded the finale episode, and I hope that everyone gives it a listen, because it was a lot of fun to cover this very deep and disturbing show. But I feel like Wendy and Jason and I did a really good job with it.
Yeah, you absolutely did. I listened all the way through every week.
Thank you.
It was always so much fun. Then, of course, talking about shows ending their season.
Oh, goodness.
Our good friends Jason and Lucy over on the Walking Dead cast just wrapped up the season finale of Fear the Walking Dead, Season 6. So if you love Fear the Walking Dead, don't listen to that podcast, because it is a 2-hour hate fest of that dud of a finale. But, if you watch Fear the Walking Dead and know how terrible it is, then definitely check out that podcast, because they have a great time ripping it apart, and just it's turned into hate watching at this point, which they usually don't like to do, but there's nothing else you can do with Fear right now, right?
Yeah, I think that Jason even announced that was the last episode of Fear they're going to cover.
Yeah, they're not going to cover
Going
season
forward.
7. Of course, they said that last season too, and then they ended up doing this. So
they did.
We'll see. We'll see.
I don't know.
No,
I
think
feel
the
like
way that was a final nail in the coffin. This finale,
was.
I think.
I think it was. I feel like when you have a show like that that comes out and you love the characters and you love what the actors are trying to do with what they have, and it just isn't working, and you just feel bad about it. Then you go and you cover something like The Handmaid's Tale that's got a great cast and great writing and great attention to detail.
Yeah.
It just points out the obvious that there are severe deficiencies in some of what Fear is doing. And I feel bad because I
Mainly
love
the
Walking
writing.
Dead. Yeah, the writing is...
Because the actors and the characters are great. It's just...
They are.
It's just so poorly written.
They're just messing... Yeah, they're messing with characters that they've turned them into something that I never imagined they would be, some of the characters. And I feel for the people that are in the roles because it's not easy. No. It can't be easy.
But anyway, on a lighter note, shows that are good right now. Of course, you can run around. If you are a fan of Loki on Disney Plus, Marvel fan like myself and Daphne,
yes,
then you can check out Mark and Steve over on Panels to Pixels, or our good friend Derek and his co-hosts covering it on TV Podcast Industries as well.
Yes.
And then TV Podcast Industries also doing The Bad Batch still. That's still going over on Disney Plus as well. So if you're a Star Wars fan, also be checking that out.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Adrenaline Cinema is back as Mark and Jerry are expressing their love for Ray Harryhausen when they are discussing the 1963 film Jason and the Argonauts.
I haven't seen that film in a very long time, and listening to them makes me want to go back and check it out again. Yeah. It's been so long.
I haven't seen it.
I feel like you need to, Pake. You need to. We keep picking away at those earlier movies on our podcast, but
I mean, hey, we're going to the same year next week. We're going to 63 next week, right here on this podcast.
Yes,
but before you hear what that is, one last shout out. Our good friend Ben on Wilhelm is out this week. Him and Mark are talking all things their favorite John Cusack movies.
Yes.
So if you're a big fan of Cusack and his films, then definitely check out Wilhelm. They're going to be talking all things that, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think both of us are slated for future episodes. We just haven't recorded yet.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll get mine done pretty soon with him. And
yeah. Looking forward to it.
Coming up.
Yeah.
But all right. Last thing on the agenda. Daphne, I've teased it a couple times, but what is happening next week here on Run for Your Lives?
Next week, we're going way back to 1963 as we visit beautiful Bodega Bay and talk all things the birds.
Yay!
Alfred Hitchcock directed this horror film towards the end of his career and discovered a young Tippi Hedren who makes her feature debut. We enjoyed this slow burn where birds attack a small California coastal community, and the residents have a hard time accepting that it's really happening.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
What a feature film debut for actors. We had Tom Holland this week, and then get a Tippi Hedren. We're going way back, but
We are. If anyone out there has ideas for movies we should cover, let us know. We do have a great long list, but we know that there could be some that we miss, and we'd love for them to be pointed out, especially some of the independent films, because I feel like they don't get enough attention, and maybe we can shed a little light on it. We've done that a couple of times already.
Who better to know what we should cover on this podcast than the people who listen to it, because they're the ones who are going to want to hear about these movies. So
exactly.
Tell us what you want to hear us talk about. What do you want to watch and send us feedback for?
Yeah. We did have a little bit of news. Pake and I found out that Greenland, which is a movie that we covered a while back, I think it was back in December, is slated potentially for a sequel.
Yeah.
Not sure how that's going to work.
Interesting. Don't know what that's going to be, but
we're not really sure what's going to happen with it. But very much like Attack the Block, we thought we would share that news with you guys. If you liked Greenland, they are potentially working on a sequel. I guess we'll keep our ears open, our eyes open to see if there's any news in the future, and we'll mention it.
We'll hop on that plane when we get there.
We'll hop on that plane when we get there. And with that, we have reached the end of another episode. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.